Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Global Talent Mobility Technology for Life After COVID. There will be an interactive Q&A towards the end of the session, so please drop any questions you have into the chat. And with that, I will hand over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Holly, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. By way of introduction, my name is Rebecca. I'm the Director of Solutions Consulting at Topia. I've spent about 15 years in the mobility industry. I've worked in London, Melbourne, and Tokyo. I started off my career looking after Japanese organizations with cross-border employees. And today I've become very passionate about how we can help tech organizations with the modern challenges of global mobility using technology as a lever. And I'm personally fascinated by the conditions today, and especially today's debate about specific technology that we're using to track and monitor health risks, and the implications that this is rising that are potentially contradictory in terms of employee privacy versus compliance and global welfare. But let's begin with what we'd like to talk through today. So our 4 parts of the hypothesis for today's webinar are that the talent mobility function has been absolutely fundamental in helping organizations to respond to the global pandemic crisis. And despite the challenges in the near and long-term future, we feel very strongly that talent mobility can and should take the lead in planning for the recovery, whatever that looks like. We also believe very firmly that mobility technology can form a key part of your plan, and indeed, without it, you may struggle. And with that in mind, we've got some tips from our point of view for how you might go about planning for your organization's recovery and building the business case for a strong and thriving talent mobility function that is supported by best-in-class technology. So we are clearly in an unprecedented global situation, which has had immediate impacts on the way that we are all working. And we feel that these impacts are going to continue to be felt for a long time. And some of these may have had permanent changes to your global workforce. Despite the uncertainty and the impacts that you are facing at the moment, one thing is abundantly clear. HR and mobility teams have been absolutely critical in helping organizations manage through these times by identifying where employees are around the world, activating repatriation plans where needed, assisting employees where they were stranded, providing advice as to the implications of remote working, and ensuring that your organization is kept up to date with the fast changing regulatory environment. One of the positive outcomes of this situation for our industry is that this pressure has helped us rise to the challenge and raise the mobility profile within organizations right up to the C-suite. In fact, a recent poll in one of our previous webinars suggested that 44% of the delegates expect to see an increase in engagement from the C-suite in global mobility leadership and strategic objectives. So given this context and this apparent focus from the C-suite on talent mobility, I'd be really interested to understand from our audience today whether you agree. Are you expecting increased focus and attention from your leadership? And how likely do you think they will be how likely is it that they will be interested in investing in mobility technology? Here's the poll that should be on your screens today. I'll just give you a couple of moments to complete your answers. Okay, so this is fantastic data. So 44% of the audience think that the organization is likely to support an investment in mobility technology if there's a strong business case. Although there is support, where there is support, it may not happen until future years. But a significant percentage already have a priority for investing in mobile technology. So this is really encouraging given the situation that we have today. And it begs the question, what does make a strong business case for technology? Something that I'd like to explore in this webinar. So even if you are anticipating investment from your organization in the talent mobility function and in technology, it may seem that the challenges ahead will create increased pressure and increased scrutiny on the talent mobility function and the value that they can return to the organization in these unexpected and unprecedented times. So I think it's important for us to start anticipating business need and the ways in which we can use these challenges to demonstrate continuing value to the organization. There's no doubt that there's going to be some continuing volatility and unpredictability on your global workforce volumes. And that's going to arise from two key hotspots: the organizational need or lack thereof, depending on the impact on your particular industry and organization, and also employee expectations and concerns. Whether the outcome is resulting in reduced volumes or not, as a talent mobility leader, you can play a significant role in the longer term planning. For example, if you anticipate a massive increase, the massive increase in remote working to continue, could employee expectations around remote working lead to innovative ways to support global talent requirements? For example, in the concept of virtual assignments. And how would the mobility function organize to be able to support these compliantly and with a focus on employee welfare and the concerns of the business? It's clear that in an unprecedented crisis situation, as we move slowly to the recovery phase, there's going to be scrutiny on the business case or the inherent value of any move. A lot of mobility functions are way ahead of the curve in their ability to create accurate and quick simulations and cost estimates. But I think where we have the opportunity to take a lead here is in examining other areas of value to the business. So having a think about the strategic impact of your mobility population in the future. Unfortunately, we're anticipating continuing operational challenges to deliver the mobility function in the future. So it may be that we're facing uneven and unpredictable cost profiles. For example, there's not very much clarity about the impact to the airline industry and the corresponding effect on flight costs. Another example might be the requirements to consider quarantine periods and the impacts of the cost to a specific assignment. As well as those operational challenges, of course, we're working in these fast changing regulatory requirements. And this means that having quick and accurate spend data is going to be fundamental. And we are also predicting that the importance of agile scenario planning and budgeting is going to be ever more important to your organization. What's clear is to navigate through these challenges and support the business in the decisions that they're going to be taking is you need to access data and you need a way to slice and dice and report on the data that makes sense to your organization. And the data is going to form into two broad areas. The first is going to be practical data. Which borders are open? Where are the high risk areas? Where are we facing additional processing time, quarantine requirements, and so on? And then secondly, the insightful data. So what is the business case for a particular move? Does it stack up against the cost of the move and the risk, and what is the employee attitude or expectation or concern for their own personal circumstances. Not only can all of these challenges be presented as key considerations for the continuing relevance and value of the mobility function, but they can also be used to create a compelling business case for increased support from mobility-specific technology. With global mobility technology, you can optimize the operational delivery structure of your program. Through scenario planning, different and innovative policy approaches, you can aim to reduce costs in the longer term. And by having your hands on your full cost and spend data, you can look at ways to optimize your spend in both the near and the long term. By having mobility data in one place and through the power of integrations with core HR systems and other organizational systems, you can strengthen the ability of your organization to make informed decisions using the data and the insights. By supporting live, accurate tracking of all of your people in an appropriate way, technology can help safeguard your organization and its employees against these increasing compliance, health, and security risks. And ultimately, the mobility function as a whole, by leveraging technology, can be perceived as more valuable by increasing the speed and agility of your organization to respond and recover. Out of interest, it would be great to get a quick sense check from the audience today about how prepared you feel in terms of a business case for investment in global mobility technology. Here's the poll. Technology and data is going to be a vital part of future operational readiness and agility. Do you feel you have the resources available to build your business case? Okay, so a fairly even split between those of you, 42% of you, who already have implemented the conversation to build a business case for mobility technology, and those that are getting started but perhaps need more time to position the business case. And the remainder of you are not sure where to start. Well, let's have a think about some of our suggestions with where to start and what to think about as you are building your business case. I think we'd suggest that your first steps should be looking back and assessing the strengths and weaknesses of your crisis response. So what did your organization need from the talent mobility function? And could you easily respond and provide according to those needs? What was easy to obtain? What was less easy to obtain? Where were the breakdowns in data and workflow, and why? And more importantly, what was the impact of those strengths and weaknesses on the organization? What did your mobile employees need from you in this time of crisis? And again, were you able to provide it well? What went well more generally, and what was the impact, and what did not go well? What's important here is to dig into the data and formulate a full debrief with all of the key stakeholders involved in the crisis response. Use your data to show where the breakages were, where you had difficulties with tracking, where your pain points were. This will arm you with the trigger points to demonstrate the value as you turn to the recovery mode. The results of your assessment will therefore arm you with some valuable data in how you reacted to the crisis. But it's also important to then take a look forward and align any future strategies with the reality of your business as it is today in 3 key areas. 1, the smart deployment of talent according to your organization's objectives in the new reality. 2, how to optimize the provision of rewards and benefits, particularly as we are facing increased scrutiny and pressure on cost. And 3, how to continue navigating increasingly complex compliance and operational hurdles. With respect to business alignment, take a moment to strengthen the relationships that you've built with your key business stakeholders and start to answer these questions. What are the critical roles that are going to need to be filled as soon as possible? And what's the likely demand for mobility talent in the medium and long term? Can you evaluate any alternative models to fill your global talent needs? And what role is mobility going to play in overseeing these alternative models, such as alternative virtual assignments? Once we've understood the workforce strategy, it's time to then understand the financial impact and positioning of your mobility spend profile. Can you easily see and understand the position and impact of your mobility spend today? Is it aligned to the changing business priorities? Can you identify any opportunities to generate cost savings without unduly impacting other priorities such as employee welfare? And finally, we can start to act on the operational delivery in alignment with your business goals and your strategic spend review. How do you ensure that you continue to stay up to date to maintain compliance? How can you help the organization understand and address both individual and corporate risk resulting from these alternative ways of working? What new policy types might be needed to be developed to support the business going forward? And what changes could we consider making to our service delivery model, such as your vendor model, your technology model, of course, and your team structure? Any actions must first be based on an assessment of where you are as a mobility program, but also as an organization as a result of COVID-19. We think that the impact is likely to fall into 3 key categories. The first is that there's been a significant impact on your business and the outlook is unchanged. In other words, the outlook is going to be significantly impacted for the near and potentially long-term future. The second category is that you've experienced vast disruption in the short term, but you anticipate a return to stability at some point. And the third category is that your organization or industry is in fact benefiting under the new reality that we see today. Your ability to flex your business case based on in which category your organization falls today can be helped by considering some of these components for each category. For example, if your business has faced a significant impact, your organization is likely to be focused on cost optimization as a priority. An automatic outcome may be to reduce mobility volume, but you could also consider modeling out scenarios using reductions in supply chain costs, optimizing policies, and delivering the program with a smaller team. If your business has experienced a temporary disruption, but you're anticipating a fairly stable recovery, you could use this time to think about focusing on any gaps identified in that disruption, thinking about whether your policies are optimized to take the organization forward, and of course, concentrating again on supply chain cost reductions. You could use your business case to highlight the efficiency and effectiveness of that automation could bring to support your business as it resumes normal operations. And if your organization seems likely to have a very strong recovery, or indeed is actively benefiting today, Now's the time to build on your success and maintain your close ties and relationships with your organization's talent strategy. You could focus on how to consider attracting and retaining talent, and this talent may well have different expectations, especially in respect of innovative ways to deliver mobility workforce that may look outside of our traditional policy structures. Regardless of your organizational reality today, it's clear that the tracking and managing of your global workforce is more critical than ever, and recent developments have only served to highlight this reality. Tracking and managing can be effectively achieved by best-in-class technology. And in summary, the thread that runs through is that global mobility technology is fundamental to helping your organization achieve their talent goals as they aim for near-term and long-term recovery and their achievement of strategic goals. So thank you for listening to our point of view. I'm going to pause there and ask if we have had any questions from the audience today.
Yes, we have one, and that one is, in the long term, do you see an increase in virtual assignments, and how can we prepare for this?
Yes, great question. So I think it's almost guaranteed that the trend in remote working is only going to continue, and this is going to have a knock-on impact on the ways that we consider the deployment of mobile talent. Now that organizations and their people have become used to remote working, and many organizations have seen that there is no corresponding impact on efficiency or effectiveness, it could be that in the past, where people were deployed from country to country, we may be able to consider virtual assignments. Now, this is not necessarily meaning that the mobility talent function won't have a part to play. Virtual assignments can still create, as I'm sure you're all aware, various compliance challenges relating to tax implications for both the individual and the corporate entity. And there's still the obligation and duty of care for your virtual or remote workers. I think mobility talent function can show strong leadership here, as we are well used to dealing with these complex compliance challenges that have resulted from the ways that we've handled alternative moves in the past. I hope that helps answer the question. Any other questions?
Yeah, we've had another one come through. Are you expecting more self-service allowance-based relocations, with employees having more involvement in the process instead of relocations being entirely managed by the HR team?
Gosh, that's a really good question. And I can think of a couple of ways or a couple of issues there. So first of all, the trend towards self-service was gaining pace pre the pandemic. We saw that this was a trend for many of our customers and many people in the industry, employees demanding more self-service. And also a focus and an increase on cost optimization was leading to the delivery of more self-service approaches. Post-pandemic, I think there are two contradictory factors here. The first is that employee experience is continuing to be a focus, so the demand for self-service from employees is likely to continue to arise. That might be supported by the feeling or employee expectation that given remote working is widespread today, why can't they choose to work wherever they want and just be given a budget to sort themselves out? I think that's complicated by the health and welfare implications of tomorrow's ways of working. So we need to still be aware of where our employees are. We need to be able to ensure their health and security, and we need to understand what the requirements are for any assignment. And these are fast changing. We don't know yet how long quarantine regulations will stay in place. We don't know yet what the pattern of recovery globally will look like. It's likely to be patchy and uneven. Therefore, I think the benefit of the cost-saving approach and the employee experience side from a self-service point of view might have to be carefully weighed up against the welfare of the employee, the support they get from a fully serviced model, and the compliance and health and safety requirements that organizations are going to have to contend with. Great question.
Okay, and just one more. What impact on technology, in your view, now that we really need a holistic view of an assignee's status, from immigration to insurances to taxes to travel dates to security, for knowing exactly where they are?
Yes, I think the ramifications are huge. So I think that it's just been absolutely highlighted that organizations need to know immediately where their people are, what their status is, how they can contact them quickly, and what their status is in respect of all of those areas: tax, immigration, family and dependents, and so on. So I think technology that is able to integrate the entire ecosystem to bring that viewpoint into one place, so that organizations can react agilely and quickly at a moment's notice, that's going to be pivotal and absolutely central to demand, in my opinion.
Great, thank you so much. So thank you so much for your time today, Rebecca, and thank you everyone for joining. Any questions we didn't have time for today, we'll make sure to follow up on email directly. And then just one final point, if you can move to the next slide. We have some additional resources for you on our website. So we have a global talent mobility assessment, and we have a return on investment calculator. So you'll be able to access those following those links. And then we can end there. So thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.